Today's show is sponsored by Mailtrap, modern email delivery for developers. The complete email API that does everything you need it to do. Try it today at mailtrap.io and get 20% off for all plans with the promo code CLOUDCAST. That's mailtrap.io, mailtrap.io.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody's doing well. Throwing you a little bit of a curveball this week for the Wednesday show. Aaron usually kicks these off, but he is traveling over to Europe. Didn't necessarily want to take all of his recording gear with him overseas through all the airports and TSAs and other sorts of things you need when you travel internationally. So I'm not only kicking off the show this week, but also doing the interview. So this will be our last guest interview of the year. Last guest interview of 2025. The remaining shows will all either be weekend perspectives or Aaron and I, as well as maybe some other guests, doing some interesting recap shows for the last probably 2 or 3 of the year, and then we'll get it wrapped up before New Year's. So anyways, great show this week. We are going to dive into a topic that we haven't really talked about that much, although kind of really goes back to our roots, which is diving in a little bit with infrastructure, and more importantly, looking at what sort of big changes, small changes, new ways of thinking about things architecture-wise that companies need to think about as they are beginning to look at how AI is coming into their world, especially in private data centers and sovereign AI environments and so forth. So excited to dig into that topic and really some good expertise around that right after the break. Self-driving cars, delivery drones, and fleets of automated mining machines have moved from headlines to habits, but they can only travel as fast as the tech underneath it. On Interconnected, a new show by Equinix that explores the hidden infrastructure behind our connected future, they shed light on the challenges of scaling safety, where computation happens, and a future where cities are built with autonomy in mind. MIT research scientist Brian Reimer and emerging technology leader Patrina Steele explain how the way we move is changing and where the future will take us. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And we're back. And today, folks, we are going to dive into something that I know a lot of you that work on platform teams, on infrastructure teams, on data teams are very curious about, which is really, as we're evolving from the challenges of, cloud native applications, of managing, all the things that we've tried to do over the last decade with cloud. And you're now being tasked with, what do I do around AI and the various aspects that involve AI, especially generative AI, from how you're doing data management to how you are accessing applications and data, and maybe all the changes that potentially come along with having to manage both those types of environments at the same time. And so very, very excited today to dig into that and a number of aspects around that. Excited to have Dan McConnell, who is Senior Vice President of Product Management at Hitachi Vantara. Dan, great to have you with us today. Really excited to have you on today.
Thank you much, Brian. Excited to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Before we dive into anything about Hitachi and AI and stuff, give us a little bit of your background. You've been around this space for quite a while. You've held leadership roles in this space, but tell us about your background and then really kind of where you're focused these days.
Absolutely. Background. Guess I've been in, I just call it the infrastructure realm for, doing the math here, I'll say 25 to 30 years. Okay. And these days, I run an organization for Hitachi Vantara that focuses on overall infrastructure solutions, and ecosystem. Obviously, AI analytics, a key focus of most anyone today in the infrastructure space. So we've got awful lot going on in that space, both from the storage and data aspects all the way up through compute and GPU aspects as well.
Sure. Well, let's start right there. Let's jump right into it. So obviously, AI is getting not only a lot of buzz in the industry, but there's a lot of companies who are, making progress in their journey. So how are you seeing, as you get a chance to talk to different companies, whether they are your partners in technology or sort of end user customers and companies, how is AI changing the way that they're thinking about infrastructure? Because obviously it can be a very heavy burden. It can be a lot of additional work, but how are they really thinking about it, maybe at a big picture level?
Interesting question, and it's going through phases, I guess, like everything does. But initial phases were, a bit of an arms race on GPUs, right? How do I go procure and get GPU infrastructure set up? Not everyone knew they needed to do AI. People weren't quite sure what they were going to do with it, but they knew they needed GPUs to do it. So initial phases, a bit of an arms race around GPUs, and phase two, people start to get their arms around. Here's where it can be useful. Here's how we can apply it. Here's where we can't apply it.
Yeah.
And then what I would call phase three, which we're kind of in the middle of 2 and 3 now, but the data management aspect of it, of course, the fuel for AI and Gen AI is data. So tremendous amounts of data, growing data, but we don't just need to store the ones and the zeros. We need to start understanding what that data is. How do we cleanse it? How do we classify it? How do we tag it so that it can be used to fuel these AI pipelines? So, race towards GPUs, race towards trying to figure out what we can do with it. And then that's cresting into, okay, how do we get our arms around all of this data to go fuel those initiatives?
Yeah. And were you seeing it sort of, driven more top down, or was it being driven by data science teams who were, seeing new technology available to them? Was it, what was there part of those phases that was driven more from a certain group with needs, or have the challenges and the demands been coming from all over the place? Teams that want to support it, teams that need to build applications. Has there been a pattern in that stage as well, in those multiple stages?
Sure. Yeah. No. It was definitely in the early stages, very much tops down. Right. Once again, we need to go do AI. What does that mean? Not sure. We just need to do AI.
Yeah.
Very, very tops down, people running, kind of that phase one, more tops down. Phase two is more, I don't know if I call it bottoms up, but understanding how to harness the power of AI has been more bottoms up. So started tops down, becoming more bottoms up as people get their plans in place in terms of how they can utilize it.
Yeah. What are you seeing? Obviously, you talked about data being the fuel for AI workloads. That's obvious. We're seeing the size of models. We're seeing the rate of data ingested into these environments. But what makes the AI models or the AI workloads different these days? I mean, we've gone through data lakes and we've seen data intensive databases. But are there unique characteristics about AI workloads that are starting to emerge more and more?
Yeah, the first one is performance, right? So the one big new push with AI is just a resurgence of the focus on performance. How do you keep these GPUs fed so that they're not underutilized?
Yeah.
And performance is a vague word, right?
Right.
One of the differences around AI is as you go through different stages in the pipeline, performance means different things, right? Whether it's heavy streaming writes as you're collecting data, or it's much higher transactional kind of focus on latency as you're doing things like training, or so it's very, very on the same sets of data, very different performance requirements that take you from streaming all the way to IOPS and transactional. So the goal or the newness here is how do you get that performance across the different workloads from a common storage platform, so that you're not having to move the data, copy the data, because as you were mentioning, it's sizable. So moving it is time consuming and expensive.
Yeah, I can imagine. Are you finding that, even in the best of environments from an infrastructure perspective, it's breaking things that previously were in place, or is it starting to make things more brittle than kind of previous generations of infrastructure?
Sure, it's definitely stressing the systems. Multiple scenarios, right? One, how do I get all those different performance attributes out of a common storage platform, so to speak. Two, you've got data that's in the cloud and data that's on premise and data that's on the edge, highly distributed data, and the performance and latency sensitivity around AI is driving compute close to where that storage is, right? There's this concept of data gravity. So compute comes to the storage. Things like hybrid cloud capabilities, to where you can manage across on-premise or on the cloud, or things like common storage infrastructures that run, whether they're in the core or on the edge, because you're going to have data that's distributed and have to manage it more holistically. So it's definitely putting pressure on. I just say pressure towards having a more common storage infrastructure that can operate across the different modalities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. I can see, definitely if you've got companies who, it's the challenge, like you said, of, your applications are, have begun to get disseminated, whether they were on premises previously, they moved into the public cloud. Maybe you've built some things there. Maybe you've built things out at the edge. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, where does it make the most sense to, to bring AI to those applications? Because maybe it's a new user experience. Maybe it's, something for the analyst, the analytics team. In other cases, it might just be as simple as, where can we get GPUs? Because GPUs are somewhat of a challenging resource to get at times in certain form factors and price points. So yeah, I can imagine, we're sort of back again to, the challenges of, I have all these business concerns. The business doesn't really care how my technology works, but the technologists now have to figure out how to do it cost effectively and keep it secure and so forth. What are you starting to see? Obviously with all those, sort of moving parts, what are you seeing as a strategy that's emerging from organizations that are trying to wrap their arms around that?
Sure. And it's a few different aspects, right? One, on the storage infrastructure side, movement towards, like I said, more common platforms that can handle the different modalities, whether it's a software-defined version that might run on the edge, or an enterprise-class array version that might run at core, or a cloud-hosted version that might run in one of the hyperscalers. So getting that commonality of a call it a storage operating system, definite trend, and then another one around, I'll say data management, but it's growing capabilities on understanding what's in the ones and the zeros, looking for what people call PII, right? Personally identifiable information. So cracking the ones and zeros, understanding the ones and zeros, getting their arms around what's in the data, what is sensitive data, what is not sensitive data. So one, getting the storage infrastructure there. Two, starting to get information or metadata around what that data is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are you seeing, obviously some of that information, if it was in a structured database, not as difficult to necessarily find and parse. We've done that for a while, but as we start to get into LLMs that just want raw data, they're going to turn it into the formats that they use. Are you now being asked as a data as a data company, an infrastructure company, to dive deeper into what the LLMs do or how ingestion works? I mean, is it changing the way that storage and data access is worked in the past?
Absolutely. And like you were mentioning, heavy push on unstructured data, and somewhat getting smarter around different data structures. Right. For a good example, we just announced support for S3 tables on our object store on VSP1 object. So not just dealing with objects, but the capability of storing tables, right? And actual performing SQL queries against the native object store. So storage arrays getting smarter and smarter around what the data sets are, what the structure of that unstructured data is, and building it natively in the array. When it's in the array, it can handle things quicker, faster, and just more integrated, making it easier when it ingests data. It can index or tag. So leveraging capabilities of the storage to get smart about the data.
Gotcha. Yeah. You've been around the industry for a while. I have as well. There's times when we get kind of caught up in the buzz and the speed of sort of new announcements, but being around the enterprise or larger organizations, sometimes dissemination takes a while. What are you seeing from infrastructure teams, data teams, security teams as they watch their organizations, kind of go through those 2 or 3 stages like you talked about? Data science is trying some things. Maybe they're hiring some developers to do some stuff. Like, what are you seeing infrastructure teams doing to get ready? Because at some point, they're going to have to tackle this challenge. They're going to have to get smarter about those new aspects. But what are some of the things that you're seeing them do, kind of regardless of what stage that they're in?
It's an interesting dynamic of working across silos, right? You mentioned data science, so the big tops down push. Data scientists with heavy focus on the data, but less understanding of what the underlying technology or infrastructure might be. And then you've got the infrastructure guys that know the infrastructure, but might be less aware of the tools or tool sets that the data scientists want to use. Just as an example, so it's working across those different silos. One, okay, how do we translate a top-down push into something that is productive? Something, how do we apply it to the business? Two, okay, how do we get the data scientists talking with the infrastructure guys to make sure the infrastructure is meeting the demands of the data scientists? And they tend to speak on different levels, different careabouts, so to speak. So getting that cross functional, and there are other other functions in here, right? So in many large organizations, data protection, data resilience kind of silo is its own bucket as well. Well, that obviously they need to be involved, data security as well. So it's a lot of different functions that might not have interacted, finding out how to interact and work together quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. I know, for anybody who lived through the cloud era, so much of this was, understanding, okay, what's driving these new behaviors again, whether it was adopting the public cloud or building applications differently. And then so much of it was kind of a give and take between the teams of going, okay, what do you want differently? How do we go about doing that? Managing their expectations, which, if they're getting, new access to self-service, maybe access to data, and then you going, well, if I do that, here's the other aspects that you don't have to think about, but I do from a legal perspective or from a compliance perspective. And so, we say a lot of times in this show that the things that will emerge, and especially in enterprise AI, are going to build on the shoulders of what we did over the last decade of getting teams to be more comfortable working together, whether it's in a DevOps fashion, or now we call it ML Ops fashion, or platform engineering. A lot of those same skills and those same relationship building, collaboration are going to be really relevant here as well. So it sounds like you're seeing quite a bit of those same sort of patterns happen on the data side of things.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. I'll use an example. Even internally, one of Hitachi's offers is what we call Hitachi IQ, which is a end-to-end infrastructure stack targeted at analytics. And it's got a chunk of object store, it's got a chunk of parallel file system, it's got a chunk of GPUs, it's got a chunk of upper level software stack. So it's, even internally getting all those groups working together, aligned. It's similar, and bringing in our data protection side and our data management side. So even amidst, within Hitachi to produce this analytics focused infrastructure, we pulled from across all the different expertise sets, and sometimes groups that weren't as close, that are now very, very close as they build out this stack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense. We were talking before we hit the record. We were talking a little bit about, you guys are emerging your VSP platform around unification. It's a push that you're seeing, but you're, like you said, you're seeing it because the challenge of data, across these different domains for AI, can get kind of unwieldy. What are you seeing as sort of marrying up the value of a unified architecture with the challenges of distributed data, and businesses just wanting, they just want better experiences. They're not really thinking about, well, this is an edge application, this is something in my core. What are the values of unified platforms that really kind of shine in that problem domain?
Absolutely. Yeah. The recent announce was B85, and it is, it's kind of the model of performance and scale, right? It is, it's really big and really fast. And it's added into our VSP1 platform. So it kind of filling out in this mode of AI, scale and performance from the storage domain. I just say a whole nother order of magnitude kind of importance around scale and performance. So this recent launch kind of hits that one square on the head, and it comes with all the resiliency and reliability and everything you'd expect. So things that we're bringing to the table, so to speak, around this unified platform. One, the performance, latency, scale, resiliency of our recent launch of block high end, what we call it, but also bringing in capabilities around parallel file systems. A lot of the AI workloads like to consume from a file system perspective. So we're bringing in parallel file systems, and then obviously as data grows, you want to be able to efficiently store all this data. Not all data needs to be in tier one. So we've got object storage that is built into the infrastructure as well, for two aspects. One, just efficiently storing large amounts of data, but also tightly integrating into some of those data management frameworks. Obviously, object storage. One of the superpowers of object storage is metadata and being able to keep data on the data. So as you're working to get your arms around, kind of classification of the data you have, object store plays a key role in that as well. So as you can see, in one solution, we've hit what is a lot of different aspects of the storage domain. And then you go up the stack into the networking domain and the GPU domains, compute domains, where it's just as much getting added into the solution, but with tremendous focus on performance and latency and optimizing that whole stack.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's, again, one of the big challenges right now for any organization is they're watching things that are happening in AI. In many cases, they've got projects going on. They're watching their peers. They're seeing what's happening. They're looking at the economics of what's happening. I mean, there's a million variables that are happening, and to a certain extent, they're looking to make investments, whether it's in people or process or technology, that are going to last their normal periods of time, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And so, the ability to sort of lay out for them, look, you might be looking at this right now, you have this type of problem right now, but over time, you're going to have these types of problems. You're going to have this expansion of workloads and needs. I think kind of what you're really laying out highlights a lot of what aligns really well to the enterprise, which is, I want to be able to do certain things right now, and I want to do them very well because people have expectations of, latency of the application or, responsiveness or something. But over time, they're also, they sort of know, having, like we said, the patterns are there from having done this in the cloud. You're going to need a lot of these other capabilities there as well. And that very much seems like kind of the recipe for why unified platforms and essentially for things around infrastructure where you make bigger, longer term investments makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely. And it's, bringing your customers data through that life cycle, so to speak. Very important. Yeah. Especially when you're talking petabytes and petabytes of data.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked a ton about industry trends and so forth. Obviously, you've got a large business to run. You guys just did a big launch. Give me real quick. How is Hitachi Vantara helping customers handle growing infrastructure needs created by AI? What are the specifics around what you've been focused on, especially very lately?
Absolutely. So the recent launch actually was last week around our high-end platform. Like I mentioned before, it's huge focus around performance, reliability. We're talking 50 million IOPS, just tremendous performance, ultra low latency, with all the resiliency and reliability that we're known for. Specifically, we've got a 100% data availability guarantee, but we've also introduced ransomware detection or cyber resiliency capabilities inside the array. So it'll actually on the data automatically scan the data in the background, identify potential threats. It actually uses AI and machine learning to identify what is a potential ransomware attack. So once again, not just a traditional reliability, but also ransomware type cybersecurity reliability. So big push around our high-end platform, and then that integrates into what is our overall VSP1 platform. Common management, kind of a common data plane and a common control plane across our block, file, and object capabilities. And then we roll all of that up into what we call Hitachi IQ, which is our end-to-end analytics stack, which is the storage plane, the networking component, all the way up through several GPU focused platforms, all offered as a integrated, optimized solution targeted at analytics. So recent announcements on the storage plane, as well as continued push around what is an end-to-end engineered system specifically targeted and optimized for analytics. And we do that in tight partnership with NVIDIA, whether it's we're actually working with them. Will be one of their first storage certifications as they come up here on their next gen storage certification. So very, very tight partnership with NVIDIA to deliver this end-to-end stack.
Nice, very nice. And obviously, NVIDIA is doing extremely well, so it's a good company to be partnered with at this point in the AI journey for large companies. Well, listen, Dan, thank you so much for everything today. It was good to sort of understand where the trends are going, especially for large systems, for dispersed systems across multiple cloud environments. And it's exciting to see that you guys are, not only, thinking about, how to help companies evolve with this stuff, but that you're embedding, intelligence, AI intelligence, machine learning into your platforms to make it easier. Because we never get a comment from somebody who goes, cool, there's all sorts of new technologies. I'm already up to speed on it. I've got plenty of people ready for it. They're always sort of struggling to make sure they've got, the right people, the right skills in place. So it's good to see that you guys are technology ahead of it, but also sort of operationally ahead of it as well. So very exciting stuff. With that, folks, I want to thank Dan for his time today, and thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.